technology-aided therapy sessions. This is when I was working with another student. We're trying to find Google images. He is very techy. He likes to use Google image and then put it on Google Doc and then create his own story for practice, narratives and storytelling. So that's what we've been doing over there. Some of my typical day at work before I became a faculty member was just go in and then hang out with my kids. I sometimes will do evaluation if there's a new case. I would recommend what's appropriate for therapy, and I do some teaching with the students and consult with their caregivers. So a lot of the people I interacted with are communication disordered children. So I will clarify that term, CWCI, in a few slides. These are children with communication impairments that I interact with. And most of my day, I just play with them and have fun. So how did I actually find my niche in working and combining my passion in serving with children who have language disorders, along with the health informatics and human-computer interaction, which we do have a really awesome program here at Stanford. And then a partial of that was just play-based game research. Was when I was actually studying at UC Irvine, my advisor happened to be a game designer. So she actually wrote the textbook for game design. And the vision of our department in informatics was we're really trying to bring in interdisciplinary people like me from the clinical background, and a lot of my colleagues who are from the computer science background. And together we want to build these information technology or applications to benefit individuals who may need specific cultural or institutional knowledge to support their overall well-being and quality of life. So I was drawn to the UCI program, and that's where I actually learned about how to actually work with technologists. And later on, all my research have been involved with designers and developers, which could be some of you in this room. So let me tell you a little bit more about what you can get out of today's lecture. I'm gonna talk about the big 9 areas that my profession can provide services for people with disability, specifically communication disorders. And I will also show you kind of the historical evolution of how technology was involved in my profession. And we're gonna do hands-on activity with ChatGPT so you can simulate a day of a clinician's therapy session. Hopefully we have enough people to do a small group exercise. And at the end, I hope you can really gain some basic fundamental knowledge to learn about how to actually collaborate with a potential speech-language pathologist and appreciate the type of service delivery we're doing, and also see your own value as technologists. So that's our learning outcome for the day. We'll see how far we get to. So let me open up with 10 minutes just to give you some background about my profession so we can have some shared language. And I'll talk about what we do, some challenges as I introduce different specifics about my daily. And I will jump into the review of the technology applications, which is the part which is very interesting. As you can see, we started with more the paper-based physical, tangible artifacts, and then we went into evolution of mobile and voice and web, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but you'll get to learn more as I show you some samples. And we'll do some ChatGPT activities as a group, and then we'll wrap up with my thoughts on values in generative AI, because I have a teeny tiny paper that's in revision right now, so that's why it's not on your reading that I shared with you. But I'm gonna show you all of that, and then happy to take any questions as we go. Okay, you ready? So I want to define these subjects of interest first, because when we are studying human-computer interaction as researchers, we always want to know who are the users we're designing for. And over the course, I have developed these 3 interested stakeholder groups. These are children who have these communication impairments. I call them CWCI, and speech-language pathologists, and interaction designers or software developers. How many of you have interacted with a child who has some type of communication disability? Say they have a cleft palate or autism, or they have some type of learning disability that need extra accommodation and support, if you have heard about or interacted with them. Perfect, about 1/3 of the classroom. How many people have heard about a speech-language pathologist or know what they do? Okay, I got a little bit okay, both, or maybe. So just to show you, I'm gonna start with the interaction designer developers, because a lot of you probably are more familiar with this population. At least my new role after I started my doctoral journey, like I want to design and work with developers because I cannot do coding, unfortunately. But these are the things we learned that we can do together for these individuals with disability as well as the clinicians who are helping them. So some of these are kind of create the interface that they can use to learn and improve their communication. So some of the popular applications, probably some of you have seen, like we design games for children to play. We design ways that can allow like share of hobbies or self-expression. However, the challenges are there working with this population, and these are very, very crazy because some of the individuals probably are on the wheelchair, they have a physical disability. Some of them have cognitive or linguistic challenges. So it's very, very difficult for a designer or developer to come in and just go ahead and design for these kids. And this is where we come in. Think about this user group as not just users, but individuals with some special accommodation. So speech and language disorders actually is considered like the most common but least diagnosed disability of childhood. To put things into perspective, if you see a child like maybe at Stanford shopping mall, they're younger than 5 years old, chances are 1 in 10 of those children may have possibility or at risk for developing a speech language disorder. They could be a late talker, or they could be just like a severe type of autism that they do not talk, even like until they grow into adulthood. So you may see other types of diagnosis or disabilities having this type of speech and language disorder. And this is why I want to challenge you to think outside. Okay, I'm working with people who have depression, or I'm working with people who have autism. There are a lot of these conditions that are parallel or like systematically impacting all these diagnoses, like cerebral palsy, Down syndrome. So by addressing speech and language disorders in your design, you can help multiple populations with different types of diagnoses. And now that we know who we're designing for, what about our potential clinical research and design partners? So this is where I come in. I have worked in private schools with children with disabilities. A lot of them are actually severe or mild severe autism, so they're probably nonverbal, like we call them. Working in the schools, the pictures I showed you, really allowed me to see I can actually work with one child and also do group therapy. Because in the school system, a lot of the time, the resources are very limited. There's very limited clinicians to help all the kids who need services. So sometimes I have to group the children. So that's kind of like our service delivery method. It's one-on-one plus the group therapy. And plus kids like to get into like groups and then learn from each other and hang out. And it's actually pretty fun and therapeutic to do it that way. I have also worked in hospitals and clinics. This is where you probably had a shared experience. If you go to a doctor's office, you go in, they give you exams and they evaluate you, they may recommend some treatment and then they document. So a lot of documentation in the electronic medical record system. How many of you have kind of like heard about electronic medical record system or EMR? Yeah, a lot of you probably were working on like NLP projects and doing text mining in these large record systems. That's kind of like where our notes are going in with every single one of the clients. I have also done, let me remove my cursor, it gets distracting. I've also done therapy in the homes with both children and adults. This is a very different context. Especially in the middle of the pandemic, I have to like work with people in the home via telehealth. So I was very fortunate. I started off as a student clinician back when I was an undergrad, working with a student with autism. I think that's back in 2010 in the home setting. And I got to see like, what is it like? Like, how do they talk to parents? How do they interact with siblings? Which is very different than what I'm not able to see in the schools, in the hospital and clinic. So in the home setting, these children's communication partners are very different. And they're requiring different type of vocabulary, activities, and meaningful objectives when I develop my lesson plan and my therapy goals. So kind of like fast forward 2020, a lot of these are happening via telehealth and teletherapy. And this is where I reconnected with my home-based clients and got to see, okay, when I'm not physically in the home, there are a lot of loss affordances, moving from physical to virtual. And fortunately, I was already a doc student thinking about how can we make virtual experience a lot better. So I came back and think about all these contextualized needs and really enriched my own ways of doing teletherapy and supervision with my student. So all of these are potential contexts if you're interested in designing for your interested stakeholder groups, okay? So now that you know all the three groups, we talk about children with communication disorders, clinicians and developers and designers. There are some challenges I want to share with you all as clinical service providers. So one thing is sustainability and scalability. So if I'm one person treating all these children who need services, it's very difficult to scale my impact. Even if I put them in groups, I can probably only see 2 to 3 or 4 max, because then the individual attention will be very different. And a lot of these, like say children with autism, they couldn't sit still. Like they could be already running around if they're in this classroom and then throwing attention on the floor. So I need to implement ways to customize their needs and also pay attention to their sensory integration and all the crazy things they need to attend to, because they're so different and individualized. That's one biggest challenge I encounter is how can I make myself like more beneficial to as many people as possible. But AI is really good at doing that. Another issue we run into is issues in documentation. How many of you have gone into like a doctor's clinic and they were just like writing on their computer and don't barely like look at you when they were talking to you? I had that experience with my mom going to like a recent eye surgery. They have to do that, unfortunately, because after seeing you, that patient encounter time, they have to document what they did with you to get reimbursement from the insurance company, also to justify their services in order to actually show that they did something with you. This has already been improved. A lot of these EMR systems now allow voice dictation, so they can just say rather than typing. And the challenge right now is we still have a lot of great insights from those medical records, even with data or text mining. It's not really accurate to look for like individualized suggestions or resources. So documentation has been a challenge for us just because it's time consuming, and also poor usability in those software systems can be difficult. But for technologists, we're also struggling. I'm using we, like all of us, are struggling to find good insights from the stuff we write. So you see the dilemma. We wrote a bunch of things, and it's hard to translate into insightful clinical decision support. So this is why I have those in the red highlights. These are our challenges, and there will be more coming. So here's a wake-up call. Now I want you to try to talk to ChatGPT and learn a little bit more about what we do as speech-language pathologists. So I created a ChatGPT prompt. I'll give each one of you a few minutes to log in. And I want to show you 3 people. I'm pretty sure all of you are at least familiar with one. I want you to look for these individuals like Ed Sheeran. What type of impairments does he have? Okay, how many of you are like Ed Sheeran fans or like to listen to his songs? Like I was just listening to him as I was driving in. He does have a communication impairment, and could be one of my client or our client as speech-language pathologists. If you don't want to do him, try this guy. How many of you have seen his movie or film before? He is no longer acting because of a communication disability, if you have been following his news. So look it up. And then this last person, very visibly, he has some type of communication disability, and he uses an eye tracking system to communicate. This is also one type of client that we serve. So I'll give you a few minutes. You can pick anyone. And once you're ready, tell me what ChatGPT was telling you. You can quickly summarize it for the sake of time. And if you already have an answer, just shout it out. So we got Ed Sheeran, the singer, Bruce Willis, the actor, and Stephen Hawking, the scientist. anyone find out anything about at least one of them? Yeah, can someone tell me about Ed Sheeran? Yes. What's your name?
Sage.
Sage, thanks Sage.
It told me that he has color blindness, anxiety, panic attacks, and some injuries such as broken wrists or eardrum.
Very good. Anything else did ChatGPT tell you? Yes. Back.
Oh, it said that Ed Sheeran has a stutter.
Yeah.
And has also mentioned having dyslexia.
Yeah, he actually stutters, but when he sings, he's fine, which is super interesting. And reminding me of another movie, The King's Speech, which is also about stuttering. Yes?
It says Ed Sheeran does not have any known impairments.
Oh, I like that. Okay, we're getting different answers. And I'm curious to learn what type of prompts you're using, because it may be different prompts that you're typing in. Great. Bruce Willis. Anything about him? Did anyone try him? You find
Yeah,
something? Oh, go ahead.
It's actually the same. Like as far as I know, Bruce Willis does not have any known impairments.
Wow, I like your bot. He's making everyone good and healthy. I like it. Okay, what did you find?
Aphasia.
Aphasia. Have any of you learned about what aphasia is? It's a total breakdown of all language modality. You cannot read, you cannot write, you cannot talk, you cannot understand. And you can't even draw for some people, like they can't, or gesture. So I don't know which type he has because I'm not his primary treating therapist and I don't have access to his medical record, but because of that, he is leaving his career. Very unfortunate. How about Stephen Hawking?
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis.
Which resulted in what? Did ChatGPT tell you a little more?
Well, so in this disease, all the neurons that are motor neurons are affected.
Yeah.
So that affects all muscles. They're voluntary muscles.
So that means he cannot swallow, he cannot use his hands, and later stage he cannot even blink his eyes properly. He's just like he loses everything. So no talking, no eating, no sitting up and down, no walking around. Yeah. That's why he has a dedicated system for communication developed by Intel, and they followed him after many years. So thank you so much for that activity, and that's how I want to map you to my scope of practice. We call this ASHA Big 9. So if you took nothing out of today's lecture about what speech language pathologists do, this ASHA Big 9, which ChatGPT also will answer correctly. I tested it before, but sometimes very inconsistent. This is the right answer. Ed Sheeran has fluency disorder. He stutters. And Bruce Willis has language impairments, which also impacted his memory too, I believe, after reading the news. And also, lastly, the type of service we can provide for Dr. Hawking would be helping him with different communication modalities. For example, he probably can benefit from an augmentative alternative communication, meaning if he cannot talk with his own verbal speech, we'll give him assistive technology so he can talk through other means. That's what we are helping him with. Unfortunately, I do not have fancy technology like the one he has, but I was able to work with a lot of children with autism using like mobile-based applications, and some of my clients who are using just a low-tech communication board, which I'm gonna pass around, just so you can see like this can be both low-tech and high-tech. Let me show you some example. So if you want to work with speech language pathologists, know that a lot of them are going to specialize in this area called AAC right here. And I'm one of those people, and I love technology because we get to actually work on like recommending or evaluating a client using these type of assistive technology tools. And Sage, can you read the definition for that for me real quick? Assistive tech means
Assistive technology, assistive adaptive enablers for devices that assist an individual to function in society at a more appropriate and independent level.
Thank you. So the goal for him is with this device, he does not need to rely on any other people for talking, communicating. So a lot of these examples we have nowadays, like speech recognition software and all that, a lot of the assistive tech users had these many, many years before. And these individuals with disability really helped us push this field forward quite a bit. And there is a wide spectrum of like low to high tech. The one I'm passing around is a low tech board. if you don't have any electronic power plugged in, like how do you communicate, right? So that's kind of like how it works. And you can also have like mobile apps or computer-based programs. Like I'm gonna say one quick grading to you all on my iPad-based speech generating device that sounds like.
My name is Yao, it rhymes with meow.
My name's Yao, it rhymes with meow. You know, so these are what we call augmentative alternative communication systems, and the service we provide in this area for our clinical specialty is we're gonna help these people who have trouble either comprehending or expressing their ideas to communicate. And there is a wide spectrum of all kinds of crazy fancy tech if you get to pick this as a specialty, which I really love. And another thing I wanna kind of teach you a little bit is when you think about this, all of us somewhat are using these augmented communication because I am a big gesture. I do this a lot, like kind of like an Italian, like do this a lot. I use my body language to communicate, and this is called unaided, meaning I augment my communication sometimes with my body, my gesture, and this is what happened with Stephen Hawking. He actually used his eye blink to access this fancy tech. Later on, he declined. He had one piece of muscle that works on his face, and that's all he used for his AAC. So the one he has is eye gaze or eye tracking system. Initially, the older version, when he was physically a lot better, he just like watch what's on the screen and then like spell out words or use a message. That's how he managed to give a presentation or talk to communicate with people. And both of these type of systems are things that we can use to augment our communication. And what's interesting about all of these is you get to actually see these systems are nowhere close to actually good spoken language or speech. So I did include a screenshot of one of the programs which I have on my iPad to show you. How many sentences can you compose out of like this board here? I hope you can see it well in the back, but if not, maybe the front row people can give it a try. Like this is the type of augmented communication system that maybe some people who use icons because their language can be impaired will need to rely on. So Dr. Chen, how many phrases can you come up with if you can only talk through this?
How do I know? Suppose
If you can combine any vocabulary to compose a message
right,
and communicate with a nurse. This is a medical board.
maybe 2 to the power of maybe 10.
Okay, tell me a sentence you can communicate. I can say, why not? Right? That's a functional communication. Anything else you can compose? I don't know if people in the back can see it. It gets a little bit blurry. Even 2 words can compose a phrase that can communicate functional meaning.
I want to call someone.
I want to call someone. Very good. How about go to bed? Like good, right? Go to bed is a good thing. I want to do it now, something like that. So this is the type of system that potentially some people who have communication difficulties will get. And you know this is very limited than our spoken language. And you sometimes have to figure out where things are. Like there's big navigation problems as well. So there are different types of systems. You can have purely text-based, text-to-speech generating system. You can have these like very crazy color-coded grid-based system. All of these are the potential ones I can use to help someone to speak through these augmented speech. But what's the goal for doing all these with the people who we serve? One of the biggest challenge was these people need to have their freedom to communicate their needs and wants, right? If you cannot communicate your needs and wants, you need some way to express your frustration. Also, we need to transfer information. A lot of you use ChatGPT to like answer a question or propose a little writing example. These are all information you want to get from the technology. There are also ways to use it for just saying hi, saying bye, to establish social closeness and social etiquette, or even just to talk to yourself. Maybe I want to write a diary. or Stephen Hawking want to give a speech, he will use that system to communicate. And all of these are the goals we can do to help these people become better communicators. So let me stop here and talk about what's a challenge. Like a lot of these medical record, your eye doctor is not talking to your primary doctor, so they have no idea what they're doing sometimes. And the medical record don't talk to each other. These assistive technology applications I showed you, there's no way to know if I had this one when I was growing older, I had this one as adult, right? Because I learned more words. How do I know I have this much of a language data saved in here and then now I can talk a lot more? There's no like sharing of data, automated analysis, or tracking of progress across these different systems in these assistive technology applications as well. So that's been very challenging. Question?
So there seems to be, you talk about the symptoms.
Mhm.
People cannot be speak fluently, whatever, but there are many different causes, right? Like could be physical kind of impairment, but could be lacking vocabulary, and could be they just couldn't put in words together.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have to analyze more details to be able to provide therapies?
That's a very great question. It's like, how do I actually do assessment and then learn about their condition and then make clinically informed and evidence-based decisions to work with them and provide intervention? Let me show you, I'm gonna parking lot that question, Dr. Chen, and let me show you this next section is, I'm gonna go through this briefly and quickly so we can get through our activity on time, is how can we actually use these resources to learn what do people need when they need therapy. So really quick, this is kind of like the pre-mobile era. We don't have any iPads. 2010, when we had the first iPad, a lot of developers hopped onto these mobile technology system and start developing. So by 2017, a lot of the speech language pathologists are already using iPads for therapy services, whether it's children or adults. And this is kind of like one of my dissertation area. 2022, we see this huge adoption of voice-assisted technology where you don't have to actually touch it. You can just talk to it. So in terms of decision support for assessment and diagnosis, there were applications already built on mobile to assess like speech disorders, to assess language ability. And nowadays, there was nothing built in for this yet, but there were a lot of data. And this is kind of like how I initially got interested in conversational AI, is when I did my dissertation looking at how children talk to Alexa, and they're both like poor language models. If you wanna make an inappropriate metaphor, the child is learning language because he or she is very young. And then Alexa back then wasn't as good as the way it is right now because it's still kind of like new, and then a lot of their language data are trained on adults rather than kids. So it was having a lot of communication breakdowns. So in terms of like how do we use technology applications to assist assessments, over the past decade, there were a lot developed for speech and language on the in the mobile space. Nothing for voice yet. Not to mention like anything that implement or employ conversational AI per se. I'm gonna quickly pass through one of the articles I share with you. In this article, what I did was I interviewed a lot of clinicians and then learned about how they implement mobile technology. And as a continuation of that study, which I'm just showing you the flow chart just to show you there was some transfer of like one study onto the next one. After learning from the clinicians by interviewing them, I actually extracted all the apps they were using. They told me they use 1, 2, 3, 4. I extracted all the apps and then I analyzed the reviews for those apps in the App Store because it's openly available. And what did I find from these clinician reported information and the App Store reviews was that clinicians actually really wanted to have these fun and engaging apps that also look at this, allow the ability to have progress report, back-end data collection, and critical features, because a lot of these mobile applications don't have these built in. Envision how that could augment in a new atmosphere, like think about those now. We have this conversational, like, or let's say generative AI, where you interact with them, they will probably track or keep a record of everything that comes into the prompt request. And you can have multiple different languages and then make it culturally, linguistically sensitive, which back then was very difficult on an app. You have to localize every single interface. And they also want very nice visual audio design for different disabilities. I was playing with Midjourney the other day. The image quality and the examples they generated was so high quality that some of these clinicians would love to have back in the days. I'm gonna skip the quote, but they were just thinking, okay, they can have any type of imagery, like they want a dog, they want a tiger to be on the app, and they can create it right away without consulting artists and paying hefty fee for those. We can do those now, which is very, very exciting for me as a researcher. And what else did they also tell me is I asked those clinicians who have just implemented a lot of these different type of games and apps, they're like, they need these to be designed with evidence-based research from the clinical knowledge rather than, I think this is fun, I'm gonna make it. They do want the fun factor, but it has to really support engagement and motivation. Something I learned from the clinicians was some of them actually were very frustrated by like the existing technology not having good applications for them. A few clinicians actually developed and designed their own games by just like hiring contract developers. So they said it's very important we design with the children together and then use multimodal design, which is why I wanna foreshadow this, because the connection that now we have generative AI, it's all multimodality. And a lot of the problem we were running into back in the days when I was doing this research 5-6 years ago, we have a solution for that. And these slides are kind of lengthy and dense. It's for your reference, so I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about this other paper I did on the App Store review. Skipping past this. These are the apps we had for articulation and phonology. So earlier I showed you the Asha Big Night area. There were like speech, there were language, and these are all the apps that were mentioned by the clinicians. And then these were the AAC apps, the one you think about Stephen Hawking talks to this augmentative language system. So we analyzed a lot of apps just to see what technology needs are. And people are telling us there are a lot of influential factors coming into designing these applications. For example, before we create this, in case any of you think of like $1 million ChatGPT idea for this population, clinicians mention, or the users in the App Store reviews also mention, like cost and pricing models, which still applies to today. Every single call will be very expensive, and they're also running into the similar problem when they were developing these in the mobile era. There are also influential factors. How do you make it multilingual, inclusive? And the inclusive design piece comes in very handy because it really leads to a lot of ethical issues, especially nowadays when we talk about ethics in AI. If it miscategorizing different populations and then make a medical error, the consequences for those of you who want to design like a decision-making assessment per se can be very traumatizing. So I have some review sample from like the general speech therapy app versus those augmented communication applications. They were talking about multilingual features, which is one thing that AI is really good at right now than many, many years ago with these applications. Okay, so recommendation from the App Store reviews. I'm gonna quickly mention a couple of things. Like I mentioned earlier, my clinical challenge working with this population was how do I customize, how do I program different activities? How do I make it pretty if I had Midjourney back then? How do I make it multiculturally sensitive, have different voice languages, and how can I actually have a lot of good data stored and become insightful? So these recommendations for these different types of apps, you see the ongoing theme is still the same problem today, even though now we have new robust AI tools to solve the same set of problems. And these were the mobile health applications that we ran into when trying to design for speech language pathology. Any questions? Am I moving too fast? Are you still with me? Okay. So I'm gonna skip this page. Let's get into last challenge. So you thought all those mobile app applications that I presented are super cool. A lot of my colleagues don't like them. They're saying, oh, there's too much screen time. Like, you know, I also noticed after COVID, a lot of my students are very difficult to stay engaged in the lecture because there are a lot of distractions online, and they wanted to juggle between things, which I also do after the pandemic. Like I would sit in the department chair meeting and she's talking, I'm like, I can listen, but my eyes need to be on a different modality, maybe a TikTok video with a cute cat, but I'm still listening to you, department chair. So sometimes that could be very, very annoying. So I did get dinged for, okay, paying undivided attention. What's happening with a lot of these clinicians is they are very, very conservative when it comes to adopting technology, because a lot of them don't appreciate the multimodality. They're like, oh, I can always use my pencil, paper materials and still make it work. Why this new tech? So if you encounter someone who does not like to adopt technology, I'm just gonna be very frank with you, chances are, first of all, they're very scared of the technology and they do not wanna learn it. But once a lot of them adopted, they absolutely loved it. So another challenge they ran into is lack of proper resources. A lot of these apps were not designed with clinician input. So we look at it and we're like, this is, sorry, useless, because it did not have these evidence-based practice and research to make the app valuable for us as clinicians. So I've summarized several challenges for the lady who came in a little bit late. We're just talking about scalability issues because we cannot provide limited, we cannot expand to become multiple clinicians that can see a large population who need our services. And another issue we ran into is we wasted a lot of time trying to fight the documentation system, which could be not user-friendly in the first place. And those systems, the technology system already developed for us, whether it's for documentation or for use with our clients, can be difficult when you want to transfer information or data across and they don't have a good automatic analysis system to give us good insights as clinicians. And lastly, one big challenge is a lot of the clinicians are just not really receptive to new technology. And these are probably the people who are really, really not embracing tools like generative AI. So I want to stop here and see if you have any quick questions for me before I move on to the next portion. Good? Okay. So let me talk about how this came into interaction with voice. Let me see how am I doing on time. So when it comes to voice, one big challenge was we did have these technology, but when we come to look at the evolution of these technology, there are a lot of big tech companies making these technology, but how are we gonna apply these into health? That's still one of the biggest challenge. But when I was finishing up my line of research in the mobile health work, and then I saw that there's an opportunity to actually tap into the voice, this really connected my dot for just connecting mobile health and AI, because a lot of these voice assistants, if you don't know, they also run on the mobile app version. So even if you don't have a smart speaker, you can still use these applications on your phone. So it's almost like a mobile health extended version. Instead of just touching the app, you can also talk to these things now. Did anyone have Alexa at home yourself? Okay, I do have one. How many of you have a Google? No Google user. Anyone had Apple Siri with the very nice Sonos speaker? Okay, you have multiple, I think. Okay. Like, do they talk to each other at home sometimes?
They sometimes activate.
They do, okay. I did talk to these voice assistants more in the pandemic than what I was doing with like my friends, because we can't see each other very often. So just to clarify or educate you all, for those of you who don't use Alexa, there are two types of things you can talk to Alexa. One is a command, which is like order toilet paper, or tell me a joke, or turn on the light. And then the other type of things you can do is called Alexa skills. Think of this as more like apps on your phone, but Alexa skills inside Alexa. You can actually play games like Would You Rather with Alexa, because it's like a very conversation based, and they build it in with the conversation or prompt template. If you think of like the ChatGPT term, you can talk with Alexa and then go through all the cycles and have it give you like a very interactive, augmentative human experience. And I like to play a lot of these games myself when I was kind of like in the middle of the pandemic doing nothing at home. So clinicians are adopting these too. And there were parents writing books about how Siri helped her son with autism, because the son really likes talking to technology, because the technology never ashames him or correct him. The only thing that Siri does to the young boy with autism is, sorry, I don't understand you, can you repeat one more time, something like that. And it's very patient. Clinicians are also adopting these. As I'm doing my research, we just like anything that's related to communication, because we're speech language pathologists. So we really hopped down to the voice tech, and we did a lot of use cases with it. And what did I do in the middle of the pandemic is I went to my Alexa and I evaluated 24 commercial Alexa skills, and I kind of like developed a little categorization of what are the skills out there that can be used for therapy. There are a bunch of story skills. You can listen to stories. You can play with them, just like a voice toy, and you can play like sophisticated games. And then my evaluation kind of like look at how this was designed, how usable it was. Let me show you some examples. So the story skill, basically you can build stories and have Alexa tell you stories, so co-constructing stories. Dr. Chan was telling me you do have assignment related to like coming up with a story with ChatGPT. Did I remember that correctly?
That was probably not an assignment.
Or activity?
Was just my own homework.
Oh, your own homework, okay. So Alexa actually does that with a voice. You can co-tell a story with Alexa by building the narrative with Alexa. Or it can just read a story for you if you want to put a child to bed, if you're a mom or dad. Another skill, so this is kind of like the example dialogue of like what's happening. Like, okay, Alexa is saying something, and then give the user a prompt response to make a choice, and then that will guide the story to move forward. And it will prompt you like, do you want to play anymore? Or say, okay, all done playing. So it's very similar to how like a parent will play with a child, but probably not as user-friendly as a parent would do. There's another type of voice skill called, like, I will call it voice toy. And I have a demo to show you. This is one of my favorite, is you get to talk to Pikachu.
Alexa, play Pikachu talk.
Okay, here's Pikachu talk.
Pika Pika. Pikachu.
It's just very random. Everything you say to Alexa, it's gonna go Pikachu.
Pikachu.
So you get the whole
Pika,
story.
Pika, Pika.
Yeah. And what's so fun about that is when we work with, like, say, young children who are not even developing full-blown language, we do a lot of vocal play. We'll do, a cat goes meow, here's a choo-choo train, just so they can like start using their voice a little bit more. And when I saw the Pikachu, I'm like, I need to bring this to really young children and see how are they gonna even trigger voice technology and maybe have a really fun, engaging vocal play, because then they can play with the technology without me or without mom paying like $60 for the sessions. And this definitely is a little bit utopian type of imaginary, but it's coming. And the last type of skill is game skills. You can play trivia, 20 questions. What's so fun about game skills is it has a rule-based play mechanism. The difference between play versus game is when you have game, you have to follow some rules. You probably want to win. There are different conditions for a finish or a finished ending. Free vocal play like this one right here can be like just very casual, no rules, like pika pika, and then we'll go back and forth. A sophisticated game will have a rule. So one thing I was playing with ChatGPT is it's not really allowing me to really come up with a sophisticated rule-based system for what Alexa could offer, because a lot of these require kind of orchestrating or engineering in the back end. And a lot of sophisticated like game design, level design, but it's good to tell jokes. So that's one thing, like I do ask ChatGPT sometimes for a joke in the middle of the day when I'm like, oh, I need to change my mood a little bit. So now that you learned what these Alexa skills do, it can do a lot of communication and really, really help the clients I was serving previously on the mobile. And what I ended up doing is I created my own game. It's a little trivia game. It has 4 levels to prompt different language skills, like answering questions, copy what I say. And I launched this in the App Store after I finished my dissertation. It's called Let Me Guess. So if you're interested and you do have Alexa, feel free to play with it. But what did I learn from this after running my dissertation experiment? I ran a study and I saw how 20 children between 4 to 6 year olds played with my game. And a lot of them were doing what we're already doing with ChatGPT right now. If it's not understanding you, the child will actually rephrase that question or try to re-engage with Alexa or try to repeat it, the same question. Sometimes they will scream at Alexa, trying to see if I say it louder, will you understand me better? So it's very interesting when we think about text-based communication versus voice-based chat. A lot of these things are happening behind the door, but if I were to just extract language logging to look at what is the dialogue between Alexa and a child, all those like speech or prosodic features are gonna be gone. So it's very interesting to actually video record those sessions and see how children were interacting with these AI systems when they were both having sort of a communication breakdown. And learning from this, we implemented this game and along with other games during the middle of the pandemic with some teletherapy service providers. So we actually implemented some Alexa games in teletherapy because in the middle of the pandemic, we cannot see people face to face. This is when you saw the evolution from physical games, now to mobile, now to voice, and then we're back to doing Google PowerPoints during teletherapy because you can share the screen via Zoom and then the other side can see. So that's how we went to web very, very late in terms of technology adaptation. And what happened is when we were doing our therapy goals, we still implemented Alexa, but we paired a different technology. We had voice along with the web, which is really, really interesting. So some of these things we're learning is, okay, some of these clients we have do have Alexa at home. So we're also showing some commands so you can work on using your voice to talk. Like tell Alexa to open a game, right? That's actually a functional command using language. Tell Alexa to increase the volume. And we did that in realm of teletherapy, and we designed goals like a student will independently request or make a choice with Alexa, or we designed goals like a student will independently, if they need like a computer application that's augmenting their communication to talk, then they can use this system like Stephen Hawking to request a command or also have the freedom and the rights to play. So just to show you some Google slides, this is a little bit difficult in terms of color contrast. So in our teletherapy, knowing this is in the middle of pandemic, we can't access the kids, but they do have some type of smartphone technology, can be our therapy aid, and can also have really cool activities next to them. We show a Google slide and then we show, hey, try to tell Alexa, open Amazon Storytime. And the child gets to actually talk to Alexa while following our instruction on the screen via Google slide. So this is a screen we did during like Halloween. They were playing like some Scooby-Doo and doing a Halloween theme. So what are the challenges we learned from running these teletherapy sessions? It's very similar to running in-person sessions with the voice technology. Children really benefited from just having longer process time and be able to really have like a fast, quick turnaround because their attention span is very limited. And also you gotta really give them the exact verbal prompt and commands, just like how you were doing with my earlier activity. I think 3 of you said you asked about Ed Sheeran. One answer was consistently Ed Sheeran had no disability, even though he was stuttering. He also was colorblind. He potentially has a dyslexia, right? The prompt is very important, and teaching the clients to use the accurate prompt in order to accurately trigger the right command is very important to actually make the therapy even possible via these technology tools. So that's one of our biggest takeaway. And I'm gonna skip past this slide to tell you that now you get to actually play with ChatGPT as I'm speaking. I want you to explore what I saw in ChatGPT's affordance to help me as a speech language pathologist. I see that this can be a potential valuable tool for creating my therapy material, just like all these other technology I showed you. It could be a potential chatbot to simulate that conversation that Alexa was doing previously. And also, this could be, for those of you who want to help clinicians improve their workflow, become more efficient, this could be our assistant in our clinical service delivery. So let me give you a quick instruction. I'm gonna skip past that page. If you are sitting next to a partner or if you wanna work alone, that's fine. I want you to think about all these Azure Big 9 domains. If you wanna just stay with stuttering because you like Ed Sheeran, that's totally fine. I want you to ask a little bit about how do speech language pathologists actually work with these different type of communication disorders. And I created a scratch pad. So if you want to drop some notes and some of your examples and findings, you can go to bit.ly/422VFHW. I'm going to leave this slide up here. See if you can ask ChatGPT as many questions or just write as many prompts as possible to see what can it tell you about that specific disorder in order to become a potential supporter for us clinicians who work with speech language clients. And if you feel creative, you want to use other generative AI tools, feel free to do that as well. I know I'm running into a little bit of the QA time, but this can go very quick. You just ask a few questions and play with it. And if you do open up this document, let me quickly show you the Google Doc. And you can literally just use this if you want. I did create different domains. Because we have a small size classroom, you don't have to come into teams. But if you were like doing an articulation, like asking for questions related to just saying words correctly, articulating a sound. If you want to claim that, put your name there, because I do want to like have everyone work on one domain just so we can fill some examples. And you can just copy paste your prompts or the response from ChatGPT so we can all learn a little bit more about these big 9 domains. So let's take a few minutes and then we'll wrap up, and I'm happy to take questions. And if you have any questions in the middle, you can put your questions up there. Again, I didn't script any prompting, but in case, like any prompts for those questions, but in case you want some sample language, like how do speech language pathologists assess and treat clients with one of the big 9 domain areas? And the big 9 domain is up here on this document. I see 3 anonymous animals already on the doc. If you missed the link, it's right here. bit.ly and then 422VFHW. So it's bit.ly 422 V as virtual, F as friend, HW as homework. And if you want to work with a friend, that's perfectly fine. Okay, let's see what creative things we come up with.
So many. I just put one out. No, I don't have this one. Yeah. Which one you feel? Pick one. I movie too. Oh, no, there's someone there. Let's send them the email.
Because I don't know all of your name, feel free to put your name on the column so I know who did what. Okay, Aurora's gonna tackle fluency. Yay, Aurora. Let's help Ed Sheeran work on his stuttering. I don't know, I think he is very fluent now when he does like public interviews, so he probably was getting some help for sure.
Assistant.
Okay. No, let me put the link for that doc on the doc itself. Then you don't have to look for it. Link for this. Oh. There we go. Okay. Can I walk around to see if people need help? If you're feeling good to run it. Let's see. Ooh, see some cool answers already.
There you go. Social aspects of communication.
Okay, we have Lucas. Where is Lucas? Oh, hi. Lucas already found that. Oh, I see. This is your prompt, right? How do they use, and that's the answer below. Okay. Let me remove you. So we have more space for the last row. Okay, so this is actually pretty accurate. I'm just doing fact check right now. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, when we have difficulty saying some sounds, like English was not my first language. I had a lot of problem with the TH sounds because it's not, we don't have TH in Chinese Mandarin. So if we want to teach those, we would have to teach like, how do you actually say the TH sound? Like how do you actually put it into a contrast so TH is not like the same as te and da, which I do replace the TH with te and da, because we do have those. So those are things we teach when we work on speech articulation. This is pretty comprehensive, I like it. Okay, let's see, who has got fluency? Aurora. Oh, I'm curious to learn if you have your prompt questions. Do you mind throw it in there? Where's Laura?
Yeah, it's just how do speech language pathologists assess fluency?
Okay, just exactly like the prompt I provided. Perfect. So fluency, okay, let me tell you. So this is the fun part is you get to learn about everything we do. Fluency shaping, sorry. I'm gonna keep up with my Google Doc. So starting modification. For instance, some people who stutter, they will try to hide their stuttering by avoiding certain words they tend to stutter on. So some of these therapy techniques kind of like help them, hey, say it slow and then like take a breath, don't get too anxious so you can get that word out. So those are some of those Stanford therapy techniques. Okay, no one is doing voice, no one's doing language, Sage is doing hearing. Okay, tell us what you find.
First I asked about just how SLPs treat hearing disorders, and I asked for a more specific treatment plan.
Auditory discrimination. So a lot of children with cochlear implants do need to receive like hearing intervention just to make sure they can hear better after they fit it with cochlear implants. So one of the things we can do, for instance, I'm gonna use the TH example. They're probably gonna have a hard time differentiating the th versus the right? Because it all look the same when you say it, but one has the voicing, one did not have the voicing. So one good example is to do a contrast activity to like train them or show them those words and have them listen to it consistently. So that's auditory discrimination, just trying to like tell you what that means if I were to implement that. Okay, swallowing. Rochelle, did I say your name correctly? Hi.
Yeah, so it mentioned that some potential therapies are like exercises to help with coordination and timing of swallowing, as well as like strengthening muscles and neck and stuff.
Very good. So like Stephen Hawking later in his life, he couldn't swallow a lot of food oral, like his oral intake skill is pretty much gone. So if we were to work with him in his earlier ages, to train him with some like swallowing exercises. These would be some of these like activities, like do a hard swallow just so you can exercise your swallow muscles. Yeah, so that's that. Okay, Zoe had cognitive aspect of communication. Tell us a little bit more what you find.
One of the things that it suggested was that you could modify the environment, and I think that was specifically for attention, or I assumed it was specifically for attention, so I asked it how we could do that. And it gave me like 9 suggestions, but I don't think that all of them were actually, I only copied the 3 that I actually felt like made sense for modifying the environment. Some were like more general, again, about the original question, about like assessment and treatment generally. But the ones about modifying the environment, it said reducing background noise, modifying the light, and then providing structure, so like to-do lists, another task list, that maybe somebody could like just follow more closely or be held accountable to.
That's
All
super
those
cool.
yeah.
Can you give me an example of like one of the recommendation you feel like this is probably not right, I'm gonna drop it?
Yeah, so it says like use technology, assistive technology can support communication for individuals with speech and language difficulties. SLPs may recommend using communication devices, speech to text software, and other technology to support communication, but I don't think that answered my question of my prompt was how can we modify the environment? What are some specific suggestions?
That's very interesting.
And I meant like, I guess it wasn't clear, but I meant like physical environment.
That makes sense. So like it kind of forces you to be better with be more specific with your prompt question. It sounds like the answer it's giving to me was this 9, right? Assisted tech domain. It's giving us answers for one of the domain using answers for another domain. Okay, thank you. And then social aspect, Marcos and Momo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we used the prompt you gave us, and then it gave us like a general response, and then we asked us like how would you specifically deal with the client, and it said like are we gonna like ask the client to like tell us like where they feel like uncomfortable in social situation, how they feel uncomfortable to like, but sort of like a catch-22 situation, right, where you're asking like a client who cannot communicate very well in a social situation to communicate with us like on why they feel it like.
Yeah.
So not entirely sure of that.
And this is very awesome because like I want to show you and point to you, this is video modeling exact type of, I lost it again, sorry. Video modeling was one thing I was really hoping in my future research to use Midjourney to try, because basically video modeling means like, for example, all of you have seen TikTok videos, right? So they will do, here's my point of view of how to get into the B12 classroom from the Stanford parking lot, I don't know. It will give you the whole walking tour. And a lot of, say, children with autism, they need to learn socially, how do I say no or protest, right? Using video modeling is a really good way to teach them, this is how exactly I will say protest, and I will go no, with my gesture, something like that. So a lot of these social skills is super, super important. And I definitely feel like this was one of my favorite areas, and very excited about using generative AI for direct intervention, design, development. And sorry, we're running, definitely running out of time. But lastly, we have Siraj and Victoria. Tell us about the communication modalities.
Well, we put in a bunch of different prompts. I don't know, we haven't really gotten to looking around at it too much. It had a lot to say.
Yeah, it did have a lot to say.
I think at one point, like Victoria had asked for like certain software tools specifically for a more defined treatment plan, and then we were able to get it to like give us pros and cons.
Yeah.
Later down, I've never like heard about these, but I think you showed.
I did show some of these,
yeah,
so it came up, right?
Yeah,
that
so
was good. Yeah.
Go down there, it gave me a table.
That's actually really awesome. Oh, thanks for posting those. So now, you just used ChatGPT to learn about all the 9 domains I was trained on over the past like 10 plus years. So that kind of concluded my presentation, but I just want to highlight, because we are running out of time. This is what I was actually super excited. So I created a table for you all as like a take-home resource. I'm gonna skip this, sorry, I skipped a lot of slides. This was in one of the paper I'm revising right now, is, okay, how can we use all of these tools that we have access to, the generative AI tools, to help clinical decision-making, assessments, intervention for my field. I gave concrete examples, like if we have these video generating AI tools, they can create videos to teach parents how I work with your child in the school, so you can do the same exercise at home. If we have, like, say, for example, music, right? You saw the Pika Pika. If we have these sing-song softwares that we can use to teach them how to remember lyrics, how to use your voice, that could be very therapeutic. And last but not least, I feel like in my future, I really definitely see, in my lifetime, I get to see these multimodal AI tools become one of my best friends when I do service delivery for my clients. And I'm beyond excited about this whole change and revolution. And that concludes my talk. Thank you so much for letting me spend some quality time with you. And this was really, really interesting to learn about how these AI tools can help me. And here's my ending question. Can you build a better future for speech language therapy clients to become better communicators via generative AI? And if you're interested in working on some research project with me, just come talk to me. I'm happy to give away some business cards and we can chat after class. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I'm really excited to hear about the opportunities in this multi-modality kind of orientation. We only talk about text in this lecture. It's wonderful to know about videos and maybe images, and the music and other things can be very helpful. Any questions before?
I think Zoe has a question.
Yeah, how does the age of your patients or like impact your work? Like I would assume you have to like very cater to different age groups. And I was just wondering maybe who you see most frequently and like how that impacts the way you do treatment.
That's a great question. Let me give you a very interesting story. I previously worked with a lot of kids, and then I changed my setting. I picked up some part-time in the hospital. And one thing I realized is there's some common themes and activities that everyone enjoys doing. For example, play and recreation. Young kids want to play, but adults also want to play. They want to watch Netflix for leisure. So one thing I've learned is if I make my therapy fun and interesting, and this is why I spend a lot of time revising my slide, and Dr. Chen didn't get my slide until last minute, because I constantly think about how can I make this fun. And if you make it fun, the engagement and participation will come like very naturally. And that's one theme I saw really run underneath all my service delivery. But I did not I wasn't trained to do therapy like that, because I'm a very, very like, hey, homework, give me homework type of person when I grew up in my own cultural background, and I neglected the value of play. So a short answer to your question is, there are underlying themes. All of us have some desire for communicating needs and wants, human nature, right? And all of us have this internal desire to play and social. So if you desire technology with the principle of, I want to connect people to be socially connected or closer to each other and fun, and also fulfilling each person's need, that probably will be an application that can customize to all populations. Though, when I work with children, they have different therapy like vocabulary targets versus adults. So that definitely needs some customization. But there are underlying themes that will guide your intervention design and your technology application content design that can work universally, which is more like one of the interesting things I was learning as I'm working across different populations. Thanks for your question. Hope I addressed that properly. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
So did you like use like a GPT based like chatbot to actually do therapy with like with patients? And I mean, if so, like how did you like fine tune that that model, like using what kind of data, like actual transcripts of what you would do in person with a patient?
Yeah, I don't have a chatbot right now that I can use, but Dr. Chan kindly gave me one of his projects. I'm currently playing with it, trying to identify the client population that can benefit from the application. Because unfortunately, no one has built anything for speech language pathology yet. So I'm writing a grant right now. Hopefully I can like hire developers and work with researchers and recruit participants so they can implement this. Like how I was pushing, let's use Alexa in the middle of the pandemic because they're all home, they have their technology, why not? So I'm working on this right now, so we can all use the AI tools we have. Any other questions? So here's my contact info. It's just YaoDu at USC. And you are more than welcome to drop me a quick email if you have any questions. I know I was really going through this fast, but I want to give you this kind of historical overview of the same problem we're running into, from moving from paper to mobile and then voice and to web, and now we're living in these multimodal AI explosion right now. And I want to challenge you to think we're living in a world that's not just text-based. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We will put out your video and slides tonight. And Dr. Duvari's slides, I still haven't received it because he has been responding email very, very slowly. He's extremely busy, but we'll do that as soon as possible. So again, next week we start to really kind of formalizing your final projects, and we'll continue our lectures. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It was fun. Like I like to see their answers. That's an experiment I always want to run myself. It's like all the answers I know that we come up with.
You can share with me the
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
I do have the link.
Oh yeah. I will drop the Google Doc for you. I just figured it's interesting for them to do it themselves.